Welcome to our live today, and the title is Fasting, the Good, the Bad, and Is It For You? Yeah, is it for you? I've had so many women, especially right now, wanting to know more about fasting because there's so much information out there about it. And they're wondering, will it help? And so, what I'm here today to answer is I really have been doing lots of research because I love to do research and try and keep you all up to date. And so, I've checked with a lot of the newest stuff coming out of the New England Journal of Medicine, Harvard Medical School. There's other places like the University of Alabama. There's a lot of information coming out. And the interesting part is that they're now starting to do more research, including women. So first of all, we're going to answer a few questions. Fasting, what actually is it? And the next one is, will it really help me lose weight? And then the important one, if I lose weight fasting, will I be able to keep it off? So today, let's start with what is fasting. Question number one. Well, what we like to talk about the most is what's called intermittent fasting, and that's IF. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can do intermittent fasting. You can do what they call a 16-8, which means you fast for 16 hours and only eat for 8. Now, it doesn't mean you're eating all the time. It only means that you're just eating during those 8 hours. Or there's also a 14 fast and 10 eat, or a 12 fast and 12 eat. And so that's what we are looking at mostly. But then the other one that a lot of people are promoting is the alternate day fast. And that means you eat during 5 days a week and you fast for 2 days. And on those 2 days, you're really only going to eat somewhere between 400 to 600 calories. Now, that's what we call fasting. There's other types of fast, and those are like for religious reasons and things like that. And those they may help during that part of time because it's really part of the ceremonies, the tradition. And that's really good. That's fine. It's not going to hinder or help one way or the other that much. So fasting for religious purposes, I don't ever worry about it and say just go right ahead. It's important to practice what you're accustomed to. All right, so basically we're talking about intermittent fasting where you're eating only during a certain number of hours of the day. And if you happen to notice, there's only one where you're kind of splitting it up. That's 12 and 12. That's the only one. What it's encouraging is that you're not eating all day and all night. So we need to stop and think about it. Now, the next question that we're going to talk about is, will it help me lose weight? And what we know is that it can be beneficial for some people. And it can be safe, it can be effective. But the interesting part is that it works better for men than it does for women. So if you know some men who are being really successful with fasting, don't jump right on the bandwagon and do exactly as they're doing, because their bodies are different than ours. Their hormone levels are different than ours. And what we have found, or what they have found, and I have read, is that we know that fasting can really mess with women's hormones. Now, we know for sure it messes with the ghrelin, the leptin, those are hunger hormones. It messes with our cortisol, and that's been a surprise to them because you don't necessarily think of cortisol having to do with fasting. But what they found is that fasting for women, especially over the age of 45, it starts stressing the body. And not just your muscles and burning the fat, it just starts actually increasing your cortisol levels. So we want to be careful with fasting for women, especially if it's a long fast. So for women, they're recommending never fast, do more than a 14-10. In other words, make sure that you're not doing the 16-8. 14-10 is going to be much more beneficial, but it's also a little bit more difficult. So the 12-12 is actually probably going to work out the best for women. But the other really interesting part that comes with all of this, that if people are fasting and they're trying to do the alternate days or they're trying to do the long fasts, is that it's really not any more beneficial than healthy eating healthy foods. And so what does healthy foods means? Well, it means that you're going to be minimizing the sugars and the refined products, such as the white things, the breads, the rices, all of those sort of things, the refined grains, but also the processed foods. You're going to want to be, if you're minimizing those, that all really helps people not only lose weight, but be able to keep it off. And then the most important thing has to do with snacking. Yes, snacking. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. But let's go to our third question. And that's, will I be able to keep off the weight if I lose it with fasting? Well, what they found, and I think I just mentioned this before, is most people have found it very difficult, especially even like the 14-10, but the 16-8 is really hard because that means you're stopping 8 hours after you started to eat. So if you started to eat at 8 in the morning, you're stopping at 4 in the afternoon. And it really gets difficult. And the thing with fasting is consistency is what's going to make the most improvements. And so that's, again, why it's probably better for women to be doing the 12-12 or even the 14-10. But what research has also shown is it's really important to think about the time of day because it does matter. So what do we mean by that? Well, think about, we basically have our own circadian rhythm, okay? And that's been going on for thousands of years because basically people are awake during the day, moving, and that's when they eat. And at night, it's meant for rest and for sleeping. But they would eat during the day, they would sleep and rest at night. But we kind of now, especially in the U.S., have gotten that a little change. So at night, yeah, we might be resting early evening, but a lot of times people are also snacking. So time of day means when you start eating and when you stop eating. And so with that, we know if you're doing the fast, and I never have called it a fast, I just recommend that you don't eat at night, but in a way, that's really a fast. And that's why I try and help you to think about doing that. If you're eating breakfast at 7, stop eating at 7 at night. And another good rule to follow is making sure that you're not eating closer to bed than 3 hours. In other words, if you go to bed at 10, you need to stop eating at 7. If you go to bed at 11, well, if you started eating at 8 in the morning, I guess you could have something to eat at 8 at night, maybe, but that should be dinner. A good rule of thumb is you don't do it after dinner. So what they really have found with all of this is that yes, fasting is right for and should be for most people. And I'll go through who it's not for at the end. But for most people, and it's highly recommended. But if you're doing fasting, and this was the other thing that I forgot to mention, is that they found that a lot of times when people are doing fasting, that say the 16-8, that during those 8 hours they're kind of eating whatever they want to eat. Well, that isn't healthy either. If you're going to do a fast and help you really lose weight and keep it off, and it must be something that's sustainable, you need to be eating healthy foods. So what the research has shown is, yes, it's great to do a 12-hour fast, for women up to a 14-hour fast, but not more than that. But it's going to be really important that you avoid snacking, especially snacking after night. That you want to cut out all that nighttime eating, and you also want to make sure that at night you're doing it consistently. So you're not eating sometimes at night and sometimes not. And to make sure that you're eating healthy during the day. So you're only eating between the 12-hour time frame or that 10-hour time frame. But it's also recommended when you're doing this that you try to avoid the sugars, the refined grains. You're going to want to replace them with veggies, with fruit, with beans, things like lentils and whole grains. And notice for sure also the healthy fats, because healthy fats are so important. So now you're probably sitting there thinking, hey, this sounds like the Mediterranean diet. And yeah, it's very similar to that. So that's the 3 things. Number 4 is you need to stop grazing, because a lot of people, if they're on a fast, if they're doing the 12-12 or the 14-10, they're still picking at foods during the day. It's important that if you're going to try and be losing and getting weight under control, that you do meals, not lots of grazing. But the other really important thing that they found out is that you need to be active all day. And this is what's getting so difficult for people, and especially for women. If you're working, even if you're working at home or you're working in an office, you might be sitting a lot. And so it's highly recommended and encouraged that you get up every 60 minutes to be able to take and move. And that can be as simple as walking to refill your water. So it's important to think about making sure that you're moving, and then also making sure that you're doing something that's going to strengthen the muscles, because building our muscles, like we've talked about so many times, is so important in keeping our metabolism up. And then, of course, number 6 is it's important that we're drinking plenty of water. You're sick and tired of hearing me pushing about drinking the water, but it is really important that we are drinking water, because our brain needs it, our body needs it, and actually our weight comes down as we're drinking the water. So fasting, can it be good? Yes. In summary, a 12 to 14 hour fast is good, and I highly recommend that every woman do it. I'd recommend starting with the 12 and 12, and make sure that when you start eating, you're doing it with a breakfast that has protein. And it's important that you need to be consistent. Don't do it one day and then do it another day. Consistency matters. And I also want to really push no cheat snacks at night. Now, and I almost forgot to mention this, eating at night. That also includes drinking at night. I know some women have gotten into the habit of sitting down after a meal, and maybe all the food's put away, you've done all of that sort of stuff, and you're just ready to chill. Excuse me. And so they'll have a glass of wine and sit and relax. Maybe watch a movie, read a book, whatever. But I hate to say it, drinking anything other than water or herbal tea after night really is breaking your fast. And why I say herbal tea is if you're drinking caffeinated things, or even if you're drinking decaf coffee, I guess that could fit in there as being acceptable. But remember, anything else is not. And in back to the coffee, if you're putting things in the coffee, such as creamers and stuff, now that makes it a little bit more foodish. So you need to really think about evening. What can I just cut it out? Or can I just sit down with an herbal tea? You're going to find it's really going to help you. And don't forget, being properly hydrated is always a must. So the whole summary of the fasting, is it good for women? As they know that the most important thing is to design something, a sustainable lifestyle, something that you can do day in, day out, not worry about it. Now, also, the other thing that they did touch on in this research is that a lot of times there are other reasons why people, especially women, may want to eat. And we've talked about these a lot, but some of them can be things like stress, emotions, that negative critic that's running around upstairs. So the psychological piece is also a really important component in not only just losing the weight, but being able to keep it off. We need to be able to address those components. And actually, it doesn't have to be really complicated. There's a lot of easy techniques and tools that you can use to work with the negative critic inside. And so it's really important that when we're thinking about, let's get back into the clothes that we want to be wearing, if they're not fitting as easy or as loosely as they had been in the past, it's time to start doing something that you can sustain through any season at any time. Now, I do want to caution, as I said, I was going to tell you this earlier, that fasting is not for women who have had eating disorders in the past, or if they're pregnant or breastfeeding, or if they have diabetes, and especially if they're on medication. With any of those, it's really important that you need to discuss what you're doing with your physician before you start anything else. So, one of the big takeaways I hope you have from today is, first of all, fasting. Set it up so it can be sustainable. A 12 to 12, that can be pretty sustainable for most people. A 14 to 10, maybe not so much, but still okay for women. But anything over a 14-hour fast for women, trying to sustain it, it's really going to mess with your hormones. So the other key to remember has really nothing to do with fasting, but in a way it does. The key is to not eat at night and select healthy foods when you are eating. So remember, what worked for men doesn't necessarily work for women. So I hope that you now understand what fasting is. Will it work for you? And will it help you be able to keep your weight off? Because whatever we're doing needs to be sustainable, but it's really important that you decide and design your own guidelines. I'm here to help you, give you ideas and suggestions, and I'm here to work with you, but it's really important that you yourself design your own plan. Make your own choices. That's going to be something that you can live with for a long period of time. I know years ago when I first lost my weight, it had to be according to what I knew I could live with forever. The habits I developed then are still habits that I use today. And, through that course of time and going through menopause, yes, things change a little bit. And, the stress and all of that. But it's still important that we have our guidelines, that we can not only just lose the weight, but making sure that it's more fat that we're losing and not much muscle that we're losing, and then have it be sustainable. If you have any questions, make sure and drop them in the comments below, or just message me. I'd love to hear from you. So until next time, bye-bye.